Good evening, my recovery people. I haven't been making enough videos lately, and I apologize, but I kind of had an idea for tonight's video. I wanted to get back to my, by the way, if you hear the slurping and whatnot, that's as usual, my boy being a nuisance to my videos. But I can never bring myself to kick him out of the room. So I want to get back to sort of my original idea, my content of giving you sort of uh, snapshots of the things that I do when I run classes and run groups as a counselor. So even if I never said that when I started this channel. Um, so what I wanted to get into tonight is shame and guilt. And I ran something today and it was incredibly powerful with this class about the difference between shame and guilt. And I know most of us, when we look at it in a dictionary, we use it in our daily lives, it's essentially the same thing. You know, we use them the same. Oh, he has no shame, or man, I feel guilty for that, right? But in the world of psychology, in the world of addiction studies, they're extremely different things. So, guilt is healthy. Guilt is, I've wronged you and I feel bad about it, whether it was done intentional or most of the time unintentional. And unless you're a complete sociopath, we all have feelings of guilt throughout our lives. Okay? Normal, natural, healthy. Shame, on the other hand, not a single thing that's healthy about it. Shame, unlike I've wronged you and I feel bad about it, shame is just I am bad. I am broken. Now, if you're an addict and you've suffered from addiction for any length of time, it is almost impossible not to have internalized some of the unhealthy, unhelpful feelings of shame. I am bad. I am broken. The way our society, our criminal justice system, sadly, most of the time, even our own families, looks down on us because of this thing that we have. And unfortunately, this thing we have is a genetic brain disease. That's what addiction is. Now, I teach this, and it's one of the most, no, not one of, it is the most important thing to me in any set of classes I teach, whether it's one of my programs or individual programs or anything that I do, because I feel like it's by gaining a baseline understanding of why addiction is a disease, we begin to be able to actually let go of some of this shit for having a condition nobody ever asks for. Nobody woke up at 6 years old, went down the hall and said, Mommy, Daddy, I want to have to stab myself 100 fucking times a day with a dull needle just to have the prayer of feeling normal today. Or I want to have to suck on a glass fucking penis, pardon my way of putting it, all day long, or even several times in the morning just to get out of bed. I want to have to get up and I want to have to guzzle some shit vodka, puke it up, and then drink some more just so I don't have a seizure in the morning. Nobody does that. We never asked for that. Nobody does. Now, that doesn't absolve us from bad choices along the way, the dumb things we've done. But what it does mean is literally having this condition is not your fault. It's not. Okay? Now, I'm going to prove that to you. Pardon me. Got to get prepared. Hey, I still have my own addictions. So this one's really important to me because when I teach this to people, my prayer is that it will do for them what it did for me when I came to understand it. Because I was able to get the idea that addiction is a disease, like with an asterisk, like a state of dis-ease. I could grasp that for sure. That was easy enough, definitely. But what I could not grasp is that it was a real true disease, because that to me meant that I was grouping it with things like HIV and bipolar, both mental and physical diseases. I couldn't handle that. Partially because I was too egotistical to imagine that I actually had a fucking disease, but also because I didn't understand it, and it was painful to wrap my head around the fact that I had a disease. Now, one thing that's happened in the last 20 years, what I'm about to teach you, has become our science, our ability to do brain scans and whatnot has gotten so good that what I'm about to teach you has been literally watched happening. So it's no longer theory. This is fact, scientific fact. And that's the reason, honestly, that insurance companies have to pay out for you to go to treatment. It's the reason the state of California has to pay you disability if you're in treatment. So, that all being said, enough of a preamble. I'm going to come back and circle back to the whole idea of shame and guilt and all that. But I think to really get into that, you have to understand why addiction is a brain disease. And what I'm about to teach you guys is, it's definitely, don't get me wrong, it's a very simplified version of this. And I'm sure I'll probably have people after this come on and say, oh, you're wrong about this or that, or, you should have mentioned that. By all means, man, fucking comment below. Tell me what I did wrong, please. I've been teaching this for years, but I'm always open. I'd love to hear it. And on that note, please subscribe. Please, if you enjoy content like this and you want to hear more, I haven't been posting regularly. I was doing every Sunday, but I'm going to try and get back to something close to that. Life gets busy. I've got a 3-year-old and a dog. What can I say? I sure appreciate the love. And if you like it, hit the thumbs up. If you think I'm full of shit, hit the thumbs down, man. It won't offend me. I promise. It takes a lot more than that to offend this old fucking dope fiend. I promise. So, on that note, picture this. Let's kind of look at that as being your brain, okay? So, I'm not very good, but like, that's the front part of your brain. Somewhere back in here is the middle part of your brain. Down there is the instinct part of your brain, okay? There's 3 main parts of your brain that are affected by addiction, okay? The first one is the frontal cortex. That's responsible for logic, math, choice, where I hope we are right now, making active connections, learning, doing things with our mind that require complex thought, okay? And back in here somewhere is the pleasure center of your brain. That's responsible for all the shit that makes you go, whee, right? It's an evolutionary necessity. It has to exist, at least for humans. Less so for other animals, but still. For humans, it's the part of the brain that makes us go, sex feels good. Let's have more little humans. It's the part of the brain that says rich foods taste good. Then you don't need to eat as often. And for better or worse, it's the part of the brain responsible for why drugs feel really good. Now we'll come back to that in a second. Down at the bottom here is the amygdala. That's also more layman referred to as the lizard brain or the instinct center of the brain. It's responsible for fight or flight, for the autonomic nervous system, for breathing, blinking, swallowing. It's mainly responsible, at least for our terms here today, of the things that make you go, fuck, ow. Or, someone swinging a bat at your head. You duck. You don't sit there using this part of your brain to think about it and go, gee, shit, I think he might hit me. You just duck, right? Okay, we'll come back to that. So, front part of the brain. Joe Normie, not one of us at all. Never struggled with addiction. It's Friday night. He's had a long week. He makes a decision. I'm going to go out to the bar and have a couple beers tonight. So he uses this part of the brain to go out and fire off that part of the brain and go out and have a couple drinks. Problem is, he runs into an old high school partner and 2 drinks becomes 12 drinks. Now, Joe's not one of us. He's not used to that shit. So he wakes up the next morning feeling like fucking garbage. Feeling horrible. Maybe even a couple texts on his phone he wishes he hadn't sent. And So, he makes a decision that he's not doing that shit again. Never having more than 2 or 3. So, what's happened is he's made a decision to go fire off that part of the brain. And then this healthy interplay has come back the next morning. And he's made a conscious decision not to do that again. And he doesn't. Amazing thought, right? Novel thought to those of us who've never been fucking capable of that because he could do that because he's a normie. So there's several reasons for that, and we're going to get into that. Now, I'll just use me for an example because I'm me and that's easy. So I'm an opioid addict, right? So I got injured. I made a conscious thought, much like Joe did, to go fire off the pleasure center of my brain by taking a couple opiates, for good reason, to take painkillers. What I didn't know is I had a genetic predisposition to do a couple things. First is, and this part's not universal, but it's close, is that most addicts, when we find our drug of choice, we actually look to the outside observer like we handle it better than other people do. So, 11 years old, 90 pounds, dripping wet, prescribed 10 milligram Norcos every 2 hours. Why? Because back in 1993, you were supposed to feel no pain, and when the doctor hit me a few times with morphine, realized I had a high natural tolerance, that's what he prescribed me. And so, all I knew is that I took those 2 pills because I was in pain in social studies class, not thinking anything about taking drugs. And 40 minutes later, I felt like I'd met God. Best thing I'd ever felt, maybe to this day ever felt in my entire life. Now, 2 things there. Like I said, first of all, genetically, no fault of mine, I was naturally predisposed to be able to handle more of that drug, which that doctor knew from the amount of morphine he had to put in me. My father, twice my size, easily, would take a half of Vicodin, that's 2.5 milligrams, whereas I took 20. I had to take 8 times what he took to get anything close to the same reaction. He would take that and float away. If he took what I took as an 11-year-old kid, he'd have been sick, maybe even hospitalized, right? So higher natural talent from the outside observer almost looked like I handled that drug better, right? And then, I mean, like I said, it's the kid that you knew back in high school that could drink everyone under the table even though they were like 90 pounds, right? If you knew then what you know now, you'd go back and be like, man, I am sorry for your eventual future. Because unless you stop now, I know where that shit's going, right? But none of us knew that. And so there's that. Now, here's the more important part. Regardless of the amount that I could take, and maybe partially because of the amount that I could take, where my father got that much dopamine, I got that much dopamine from it. See, we literally get a higher high from our drug of choice than other people do. And to put in kind of a side note, this is why people have different drugs of choice. Like, for example, I tried meth. I was a fucking dumpster. I tried everything. I hated meth. Couldn't stand it. And what I know now is that there's 4 main neurotransmitters involved in getting high. I'm sure someone will come on and say, oh, there's more than that, whatever. But the 4 big ones are norepinephrine, GABA, dopamine, and serotonin. Dopamine's the feel-good one, basically. Norepinephrine, however, is involved in go fast, adrenaline. So with meth, of course, there's norepinephrine, and then there's dopamine. I got the norepinephrine high from meth. I just did not get the feel-good part. I didn't get the dopamine from it. So I got the tweaked out part, but I didn't fucking enjoy it. It was not fun to me. And I've known plenty of people who are go-fast people who feel the opposite about opioids. They got the sort of GABA twisted dopey part and the itchies, but just got sick from it and never really got the incredible flood of dopamine feel good from it. See, what that should tell you is that I'm not lying to you. It is genetic. It is the way you are wired, period. And that is from before you were even born. It's from the moment you're conceived. It has nothing to do with any choices you make or anything you did. That is just how you're wired. So the difference is that, like, let's go back to Joe for a second. So Joe gets this much with alcohol, it's GABA and dopamine. So he gets that much GABA and dopamine. Now the alcoholic gets that much GABA, but that much dopamine, the thing that makes him feel good from it. So where Joe's like, yeah, let's keep the buzz going. It feels kind of good, right? The alcoholic is way up here. And so instead of feeling like, yeah, let's keep the buzz going, what happens instead for those of us who are truly addicts when we find our drug of choice is instead of, oh, let's keep the buzz going, there's a cutoff that stops between let's hand control back to the front of the brain. Instead, shoots down to the instinct center of the brain because it's so intense. And because hungry, angry, lonely, tired, the instinct center of the brain has discovered that heroin, alcohol, meth, whatever, can fix all that shit far more efficiently than seeking companionship, eating, drinking, fucking breathing, anything, right? And so what you end up with is this really painful situation. Now, I always ask my clients, which one do you think is more powerful, the instinct center of your brain or the frontal cortex part of your brain? And what I mean is not necessarily more powerful, but in any given moment of your life, which one do you think is more powerful? The fact is, the instinct center of the brain has to be. If it wasn't, it wouldn't be able to take over and get you to duck, take your hand away, jump out of the way of the car, right? In fact, if it wasn't, we'd probably forget to breathe and fall over dead. So it has to be. So where you end up with is this incredibly traumatic place that a lot of us live in for long periods of time. You know, we think of trauma as addicts. We think of people that we've known who died. We think of crazy shit we've seen. Hell, being shot at, being stabbed. I mean, I've had a couple of those things happen. What we don't think of, though, is simply living in this place where the front part of your brain is not stupid. It's going, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to. And yet the instinct center of the brain is going, I don't care. Because the instinct center of the brain can outweigh that part of the brain. And we live there for years. Sometimes we never come back from it. That is fucking painful. Horrifically painful. There's good news, bad news situation. The good news is that every day this part of your brain is not running the show, that part of your brain gets a little more of the control over the show. The bad news is that something has to happen to make that happen. We pretty much, I don't think it's actually possible scientifically for an addict to just wake up one day and say, I'm done. Something dramatic has to happen. Generally speaking, we have to end up in jail. We have to end up in hospital or detox, or at the very, very best, have a moment of clarity and check ourselves into rehab, after which we will beg ourselves to wish we hadn't for a week or two before we come back around. But there has to be some type of intervention to give us that little break, to allow that part of the brain to start taking control of the situation again. The other good news, bad news situation is that every day you're clean, every day you're not just not using, but working recovery, that part of the brain gains some control again, giving us the bad news, responsibility. So every day that you're clean, this part of the brain has more responsibility to stay clean and less excuse not to. Now, I'm not shitting on anyone who's ever had time, years clean and relapsed. I'm not. I've been there. But by the same token, the longer you've been clean, the more it's your responsibility and the less you have excuses for what happened. Now, again, I would never shit on any addict who relapses for any reason. I don't care how long you've been clean, ever. It's all love. Just come back. But it is true that the longer you've been clean for, the less excuse you have to say, oh, this happened, so I got loaded. You know. So one more couple of things I want to add to this real quick before I end this video is, you know, one of the most painful questions that any addict can get asked is, why? Why do you do it? because we don't have an answer. Even worse is, why don't you love me enough? From your family or friends. Guarantee you, if a few people watch this, at least one or two of you are going to look at that and start crying when I said that. Because you fucking felt it. I know I have. My eyes are watering a little now, just almost PTSD memory of that shit from how much it hurt. The crazy thing is, now I have an answer to that. I wish I'd had that 10, 12 years ago. It's been 9 years since I used heroin. I just never said I was perfect, so don't start clapping. But it's been 9 years since I stabbed myself with a needle. And I wish I'd had that answer 10 years ago. The answer is, if you ask me now, because when I put that substance in my body, unwittingly, without having any idea of it, I was genetically wired to get a higher high from that drug of choice than you were, which caused the instinct center of my brain to get involved unexpectedly. And because the instinct center of my brain will always overpower the frontal cortex part of my brain, made it look to you like I had a choice when I didn't. That's the answer to that question. Short and simple. Now, one last thing I want to tackle is what we call the choice argument. So people say, oh, sure, it's an addiction, it's a disease, but there's choice with addiction. There's no choice in HIV or bipolar or whatever, right? It's the illusion of choice. It looks like there's a choice, but there's not. Now, there's a wonderful video. I don't want to plagiarize. This is a wonderful movie called Pleasure Unwoven. I don't know the doctor's name who made it, but if you look up Pleasure Unwoven, you'll find it. And he does this great skit in there where he talks about it, the illusion of choice. And I'm sure I'm not paraphrasing it exactly, but I at least wanted to give him credit for the idea. So basically, picture this. Old West bar, right? Get cheesy for a second. And drunk walks into the Old West bar, sits down in front of the bar. Bartender takes pity on him. He likes the old dude. And he gets top shelf whiskey and he puts it down the bar, fills that fucking cup up, puts it in front of him, says, hey, it's your day, man. It's yours. Drunk is looking at it, salivating, going, oh my God, I'm going to have that. Gunslinger comes up, puts his revolver to the back of the drunk's head, says, drink that drink, I'm going to blow your brains out all over the bar. Now, to the naysayer saying, well, there's choice involved, to them, that's proof. He's like, well, see, there's choice. He's not going to drink it. He doesn't want to die. Problem is, and any normies are watching this are going to be just as shocked by this, more shocked, I think, than any addict or alcoholic. See, the alcoholic has minimum of 3 thoughts that just went through his head. First one, wonder if I could at least taste that wonderful whiskey before the bullet hit my head. Go out happy. Second one, turns around, looks, wonder if I could take that gun from him, right? Third one, at the absolute best, winks at the bartender, pushes the drink aside, and kind of says, I'll be back for that. You see, nowhere in there did it ever occur to him to say, fuck the drink, you have the drink, I don't give a shit, get me out of here, get that gun out of my face. Not once. Any addict knows exactly what I'm telling you. I'd have been that way with heroin, with IV coke, 100%. Not once would it occur to me to not do it. I would have more been irritated at the asshole with the gun. See? So at the very best, all he did was delay. Never was there a choice to not have that drink. Never. And if you're a normie and you don't get that, I guess you're going to have to take that on faith. If you know any addicts, ask them what I just told you, and they will confirm what the fuck I just said. Nowhere was there a choice there. No, not at all. See, so it's the illusion of choice. So to all you naysayers, anybody who doesn't believe in all the shit I just said, think about that. There's never a choice there. Your loved ones weren't making a choice. Not once they were in active addiction. There's no choice. Looks like it. Looks like hell. Looks like they say I love you, but their actions don't prove it. I get it. I did it. But there was never really a choice. Not once they were already there. So for those of you who are normies who might actually watch this, love you people, whether they're still using or not. I'm not saying give them money. I'm not saying continue to fuck them up. No, just love them. I have one last little story to tell on that note, about loving people when they're already kind of gone, and how far you should go. Because I get this a lot too from parents. Like, what should I do? Should I give them money? Should I not? So I went to treatment once, many times ago, unfortunately. And I was back, to date myself, is back when Nokia brick phones were a thing. I might tell the story again in a shorter video, but um, it's poignant. So, my family had no idea how far gone I was, and I was on methadone, and it was the one time I ever really did dive hard into drinking, because I discovered, unfortunately, that if you took a few shots of liquor when you took your methadone, you could kind of get an oxy sort of feeling high out of it anyway. It doesn't really matter. Point was, my father had no idea that I was drinking heavily, and I got to where the one time in my life I actually did drink so hard that I'd have shakes and could almost have seizures and whatnot. And I convinced them that I was just coming off of Suboxone. That's all it was. I just needed help to go come off Suboxone. I mean, this was 2008 or something like that. It was a long time ago. But, it was just a kid. And never really had a problem with alcohol after that again, even though I drank after that. But the point was, I lied to him. I lied to him over and over again, and made them believe that this is what it was. Then I show up in rehab, and I could have probably sued him for a HIPAA violation, but the doctor there took a breath sample, turned around when my dad was still there, and said, "And he still got a BAC of 0.28 after all this time?" And my dad heard that, and everything clicked. All of a sudden, he understood all the lies and everything. And you were allowed cell phones at this particular treatment center, and they called me on that piece of shit brick phone. Literally, I had to dial this brick phone with a pen because I'd run over it with my car. It was that kind of phone, and I answered, and they told me, we're disowning you. You may not ever come home. Um, we've already paid for 28 days of treatment there, so make the most of it and figure out what the hell your next step is, because we're done with you. And I was shattered. I was 118 pounds. I'm 6'2", to put that in perspective. Right now, as you can see, I'm not a huge dude, and I'm 190 pounds. And get that, 70 plus pounds later. I was dying. I've had kidney and liver failure when I was 22, and I know what it feels like. And my insides were starting to shut down because of how badly I had abused my body. And I crawled back to that detox bed, and the nurse was super nice, and can we bring you some water and all that. And I didn't answer. I just laid there, and I decided I was going to die, and I was going to let myself go. And I was okay with that. I was kind of at peace with it, actually, despite the pain of withdrawal and everything. And, I laid there in bed, and I still don't particularly believe in God or anything else, but I made the first real prayer I've ever made in my life. And I said, God, I don't think you exist, but if you do, please help my family to just, I know they're mad at me now, but I know they'll hurt when I'm gone too. Can you just make sure they're okay? Can you just help them to just love each other and move on with their life and be okay? And a couple other things I said. And I said, help my friends to be okay. And, hey, it'd be really cool if they had an awesome funeral for me. And then I said, if there's one last thing I can ask for, one thing I could ask for myself, can you give me one sign that my mom still cares? And I'm not kidding. It's incredible Not 3 seconds later, that piece of shit Nokia brick phone buzzed. There were 3 words on there from my mom. It said, "I still love you." I sat up and I fucking crawled to the kitchen. I got a banana and I crawled back to my bed. And I spent an hour taking little nibbles off that banana and I ate it. Water every sip. Going and running to the bathroom, shitting liquid, vomiting. I taught my insides how to work again. All it took was those 3 words. So, if you are a parent, if you're a loved one of someone like me who's been dishonest and been a piece of shit, remember first, this thing is a disease. It's a brain disease. Sure, their choices may suck, and they still have responsibility for some of it. But simply having this thing is not their fault. It's not. Second of all, you don't need to spoil them. You don't need to give them money. Hell, they may even get mad at you when you don't give them money. Things like that. But at the very end of the day, when it's life or death, when it's time to give up or push the fuck on, what really matters is those 3 words. I still love you. That's it. That saved my life. And it can do the same for your family member. So, I didn't mean to get that emotional, but if nobody's told you they love you today, I love you. I hope you have a fantastic Friday night and a beautiful weekend. Be well, family.